Hello, and welcome to another episode of Pop Matters. I'm your host, Lincoln Geraghty, Professor of Media Cultures, and on this show we talk about all things pop culture, from sci-fi to comics, and all things fan-based. This month I have joining me Dr. Peter Howell, Senior Lecturer in Computer Games Design. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Dr. Adam Jerrett, Senior Lecturer in Game Design.
Hello.
Hello, Adam. And M. Kerhsaw, a student in the Games Design course in the School of Film, Media, and Creative Technologies. Now, in this episode, we'll be discussing video games and games culture. Now, there's a lot of news at the moment around popular games such as Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, and we have the Games Awards been nominated. A list of nominations have just come out. So we're going to spend the first few minutes talking about some of the latest in gaming news. Now, Em, I know you've been very interested in the sort of list of nominees. Mm-hmm. Any highlights on that list, and what should we be looking out for to win the Games Awards?
So the list of nominees this year are Astrobot, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, Elden Ring, The Shadow of Erdtree, got the rest of them, Balatro.
Mm-hmm. That's your favourite, isn't it, Adam?
That's the one I'm going to chat about.
Yeah, Black Myth Wukong, and there's one more I've forgotten.
Can't remember.
You can't remember that one. It's all right.
But what's the importance of winning an award like that? What is it within the game industry that to be nominated and then win? What does it mean for fans and players of video games?
I think broadly it's like validation
Yeah.
for the devs and also validation for the communities and the player base typically. To go like, yes, that thing, that deserves it. There's a couple of really good nominations this year. I'm a particular fan of Balatro. I can't stop playing.
Yeah.
Make it stop. For everybody who doesn't know, Balatro is like a poker-like, rogue-like game where you basically play poker hands, but the poker hands are powered up by various joker cards that have various effects, and you have to use those joker cards to basically increase your score throughout the rounds, and you kind of keep playing until you lose, and it can be a little bit addictive. Yeah. Interestingly, it's also developed by a solo developer, which, good times. I'm sure they spent a long time on it.
Yeah.
And it's really interesting to see those kinds of games, those kinds of smaller scale games getting a lot of recognition.
Yeah.
But there are tons of other really interesting nominees there. There was I know there's been a lot of controversy around Elden Ring because it's not actual Elden Ring getting nominated, it's the expansion Shadow of the Erdtree. And some people are like, oh, it's an expansion, why is it getting nominated?
Yeah.
But it was a good expansion, I think it was fine.
So it shows quite a lot of interest in these titles. Astrobot mentioned. I know you haven't played the latest, Peter, but it's one of your favourites.
I haven't, but the first Astrobot game that was released when the PS5 was released was probably the first game in a long time that made me feel a childlike glee again.
Okay.
Peter doesn't feel joy anymore.
No, it's difficult to get joy now. But no, this is one of the kind of core things in it is celebrating the history of PlayStation, which ties in quite nicely with it being the 30th anniversary of PlayStation.
Yeah.
This week or last week.
This is the week. This is the week 30 years ago that they released the first PlayStation.
Yes.
How significant is the console? Is that a PS1 right there?
That is a PS1. So that was the slim version of the PSX, which is what the original one was.
So so is PlayStation? What position does that have in gaming culture as a sort of console?
So up until the PlayStation, really, you were looking at the console wars between Nintendo and Sega, and PlayStation came along with a whole bunch of innovations that have had a lasting impact on the industry. So switching over to CDs away from cartridges, developing a whole bunch of IPs that we still have around us today: Crash Bandicoot, Tomb Raider, Spyro, etc.
Full motion video.
Yes, that's a good point.
Z targeting.
Yeah,
lots of game design
videos
stuff
in the games. Yeah.
What I know of the PS5 is the tagline. It's for the gamers, right? So it's really PlayStation designed for die-hard game aficionados and players? Is that different? What separates it out from, say, Nintendo or the Xbox?
I think for me, PlayStation probably has the widest range of stuff. Yeah,
Okay.
there's things on there that cater to every taste.
Right.
And I think Nintendo broadly are still more kind of family-friendly, family-oriented.
And they very much
Yeah.
do their own thing, right?
And they very much do their
Nintendo's
own thing, yeah.
whole deal, especially with their recent consoles, is just they're going to blaze their own trail over there with some motion controllers, usually, and some family-friendly content.
And everyone will tell them that they're nuts for doing so, and then they'll make
Billions of dollars.
billion dollars.
Yeah. We're talking about main titles and franchises. We've got Indiana Jones and the Infernal Machine here. When did this come out as a game, LucasArts?
Oh, that's a tricky
That's a
question.
tricky
I think it's about
question.
2001, maybe.
2001. So this year, this month, we have Indiana Jones and the Great Circle's just been released. Has anyone played that?
I haven't played it, but I've heard some rave reviews. It
Yeah.
seems pretty good. It looks like a Wolfenstein game. It's
Okay.
made by the developers who made Wolfenstein, certainly the new school Wolfensteins, because previously Wolfenstein was owned by id Software, the IP. So yeah, new one looks good. Has Troy Baker in it, which excites me. I like Troy Baker.
Yeah, I like to
Good voice actor, yeah.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks really interesting. I do want to get my hands on it. It is a bit strange that it's first person though. I find that a bit strange. Although it does pull back to third person for cutscenes, which I think keeps the movie magic alive.
Yeah.
I think it would be a hard sell as a traditional kind of point and click type adventure game nowadays.
Oh, but that'd
Yeah.
be so good though. Much more keeping with the filmic narrative.
I was going to say, how close is it to the feel of an Indiana Jones movie, playing one of those games through? Because all I have memories of Indiana Jones games is not getting past a Kraken in one of the games back in the early 2000s, and I've never touched them since. But are they quite close to the narratives of the film and the feel of the movies?
I mean, I think for the most part, a lot of these kinds of action adventure titles these days are trying to make you feel like you're in an Indiana Jones movie.
Yeah.
Even if you're Nathan Drake or Indiana Jones or Lara Croft.
It's all kind of pulling from that same.
It's all pulling very
style,
much from
isn't
that
it? Yeah.
same lineage, and is trying to kind of make the really big set pieces from those movies playable in various ways. Naughty Dog does a really good job of this with Uncharted, where like they, in the sort of PS3 era, really pioneered this kind of playable cutscene type situation where like, oh no, the cave is falling apart, quickly, run away. And then the camera would position usually in front of you and you'd be running towards the camera, which
Although they
good game design.
They famously kind of said in one of their documentaries that that's how they designed. They designed the set pieces first.
Oh, right.
This would be really cool to play. Now let's build a story around that.
I mean, that's kind of how a lot of blockbuster films are made these
as
days,
the
right?
MCU does it, right?
Yeah.
They're big set piece, and then we'll worry about story later.
Yeah.
We have a lot of Funko Pops on the table. I know there's some news related to Funko at the moment, Peter. Is that right?
Yes. So
Yeah.
It's a pet peeve of yours?
it's not particularly. It's just something that happened
I
to
love
me at the
those.
beginning
These are
of the
mine.
beginning of the week. One of the major kind of indie focused digital storefronts, itch.io, got taken offline.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was because Funko use a AI-driven brand protection tool,
Okay.
which flagged a single page on itch as copyright infringement. And through a whole bunch of miscommunication and things not happening, the whole of itch got taken down for about a day.
For a DMCA. assume.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
Ridiculous.
Which highlights some of the issues around relying on AI for quite important things. Also around that, in terms of AI, another news story from over the weekend was that Google had succeeded.
Yeah.
I'm going to put that in inverted
Air
commas.
quotes, yeah.
With making their Genie AI software able to create a small section of a playable thing
Wow.
from a so text description into some AI. AI generates an image. The image is then used to generate a section of gameplay, which is stable for up to a minute. And apparently, that's a really good thing for games development.
Well, I was gonna
It's
say,
not
is
a really
that
good thing for games
Threat to
development.
the industry at all?
Looking at the videos, no. No. AI's got many uses in games
Yeah.
dev. Making the whole game is not
Not
one
one
of
of
them.
Not one of them, no.
Okay. So yeah, we might pick up on this later, but so AI as a sort of generative tool is increasingly part of the industry now on the periphery.
It's certainly weaved into the
It's weaved
development
into
pipeline.
periphery. I think one of the biggest problems with that, with generative AI, is where you're getting the data from, and obviously a lot of big companies don't want to be using commercial models like ChatGPT, for example,
Yeah.
to be feeding their industry secrets into. So a lot of game companies are building their own model, their own on-device or on-server models based on whatever their IP is, so feeding in all their design documents and
Yeah.
assets and stuff, I would assume. I'm not sure to the extent with which we're getting playable stuff out of it yet, but it's probably getting some assets, probably about 50% of the way there. So you don't have to, I don't know, model half of a sword from a box or something.
It's speeding up. It's certainly speeding up
Speeding
kind of pre-production.
Yeah,
definitely.
for sure.
I don't know if you've employed it for any of your kind of module work in terms of
Or is
like,
that,
doing
is
quick.
that a secret we're allowed?
It's not suggesting any kind of misconduct, obviously, but it's part of the quick ideation process.
Well, I've avoided using it because in our assessment briefs it says not to. So I was like, I'm just gonna
Good.
not use it
Nice
at
one.
all
Nice.
based on that. But in terms of personal work, I do use it sometimes. If I'm just like, I have an idea that's almost an idea, but I just need like something to fill this little gap, then I'm like, give it to ChatGPT and just see what it says.
Yeah.
It's like I won't necessarily use that, but it may inform something else and be like, that's a good idea, but what if it was this? And then,
Yeah, I found it as that like the kind of the rubber ducky situation.
Yeah.
Rubber ducking, this idea of like holding a rubber duck when you're making games and talking
Exactly.
to the rubber duck. Instead, now we're just talking to robots.
Yeah.
The rubber duck talks back a little bit now.
Talks back a
Yeah.
little
Yeah, yeah.
Well, at least for now, I think, in terms of Pop Matters, there's no replacement for the live sort of studio sort of experience, which is good. But this will take us nicely into some of the conversation I want to have you with about games and game culture. So thanks for bringing the news and the latest in games development to us. What I want to turn to now is looking at video games and video game culture. I want to first sort of start with Peter, talking about the impact of gaming and millions of people playing games nowadays. It's part of the sort of pop culture. Where do you think games will take us? You've already mentioned AI. Where do you think it's all going to go in terms of sort of the artificial intelligence, but also sort of gameplay and sort of social aspects of gameplay?
So I think, avoiding the continuation of the AI discussion, I think really it's more about now we talk about crafting experiences, and we are looking more in depth at how do we create kind of living worlds that you want to spend
Right.
all of this time in, but in doing so, you're actually there's a benefit to spending all of that
Yeah.
time in it. You're not just kind of cranking away at the same old tasks over and over again. You're not just grinding numbers over and over again. There's actually value to being in that living, breathing world.
Yeah.
Whether that is kind of the social connection that comes with that, if it's a kind of connected game, kind of community-driven game, whether it is feeling kind of a meaningful sense of achievement and reward for engaging in that space, whether it's just escaping from the chaos of reality for a little bit in a way that is good for you, it's good for your well-being.
Yeah, I was going to say, that are there health benefits? I know, Adam, you've looked into this in terms of your research and own game design.
Yeah, so I've delved into it a little bit. I made a well-being game called What We Take With Us, which is just kind of like a little tool for well-being. You do some activities kind of center yourself, essentially.
Yeah.
But outside of that, so I mean, you can have explicit well-being games. So, I mean, we saw that in the pandemic with stuff like Animal Crossing. Everybody played
Even
Animal
my
Crossing.
wife got into that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So obviously, Animal Crossing during the pandemic, that's kind of this notion of using a particular commercial game for well-being and therapeutic stuff. And then obviously, there's the whole serious games lineage, which is kind of around my research generally, which is the idea of using games for non-entertainment based contexts, so like using them for training or simulation in a variety of ways, that can obviously in some cases be used for well-being. And then the other side of it that kind of some of Pete's research delves into is this idea of well-being from an escapist point of view. You wrote a paper, you wrote a paper that is going to be published at some point.
At some point.
Recently.
Yeah.
About
The slow
about kind of
academic grind, yeah.
student use of games in challenging life contexts.
Yes, so the role of engaging with different types of games as a way of dealing with difficult life circumstances and things that are going on in your life, whether that is escapism, whether it is using games as a way of trying to develop yourself, whether it's using games to simulate a challenge in the real world that you can test out different solutions to.
Or like processing a similar kind of thing.
Or processing similar emotions in a safe space.
Yeah.
There's lots of different ways that you can kind of use games. They don't have to be targeted well-being games to do that. They can be games that just happen to incorporate some of those themes and values.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Em, I was going to say, being a student and also, I guess, a hardcore player yourself, how do you balance sort of studying games, separating the sort of pleasure and work aspect of game design?
So personally, I don't actually play that many games. I've definitely moved more
Revelations
towards
here on the couch. Here.
yeah, I've definitely moved more towards the making games
Making, right.
aspect of it. There's a few games that I do play a lot because it's just kind of a chance for me to not think about other things and just kind of reset. Specifically, Night in the Woods is my favorite. Yeah, it's my favorite game. It's very easy to play, and I know all the things about it, so I'm like, there's no thinking involved. I just run around and do silly things.
I was going to say, what's the basic premise of that game then?
Basically, you play as a character called May.
Yeah.
She's just dropped out of college and is coming back home, but isn't talking about why she dropped out.
Okay.
She's just trying to make things seem how they were, going to hang out with friends, but obviously they've now got jobs and are doing things while she's trying to act like,
everything's fine.
Yeah, everything's fine.
It's all the same as it used to be.
But there's also a weird undertone of there's like a secret cult, and then there's kind of a mystery aspect to it, and so then the friends have to work together and work out what's happening, and it's quite an interesting.
It's cozy.
Story.
That's the whole point.
Yeah.
So you can sort of take a few hours, disconnect from what's going on, and sort of immerse yourself in that cozy sort of world. Okay. Now, I know computer games have often gotten flack in terms of the idea of both the supposed audience, that there's supposedly, it's more of a sort of media designed to attract boys and male players and representation on the back of that. But is that particularly the case? We get these stories, but I know there's statistics out there that it's basically 50-50, and girls play and boys play games just as the same as each other. Is that your understanding?
So the paper that I'm doing at the minute, I needed to dig into this.
Right.
So yes, the headline stat is that globally it is essentially 50-50. It might be more like 49% to 51, but let's call it 50-50.
Like a Trump win, it's just like that.
Just like that, yeah. But that doesn't tell the whole story. So there's quite a lot of differentiation depending on the genre. So certain genres like first-person shooters are still very male-dominated. Certain genres like puzzle games and kind of more traditional adventure games are narrative-driven experiences. That's probably a better way of putting it. Are more female-dominated.
Okay.
But the thing is really we are making games for a whole massive diverse range of people. That's the key thing. And it would be disingenuous to target one particular kind of gender demographic, definitely.
I suppose with popular titles, we mentioned Indiana Jones, that will draw in the film audience anyways, which is probably already mixed and has a sort of diverse sort of audience and crowd. And again, and talking from a complete novice position, another sort of discussion is around video games that far surpassing, say, Hollywood in terms of entertainment, money, income, sheer popularity. Is that necessarily the case? Are computer games beaten Hollywood hands down? What's the relationship between film and computer games?
I think this is a difficult thing. You're kind of comparing apples to oranges a little bit.
Good.
I think in the one case, yes, if you look at base revenue, games probably sell more copies, and I think more importantly have a longer life cycle, right? You're not as bound to theatrical releases plus whatever you're making on digital and box set releases, you have a game that can sell over a long period of time, especially as games move towards this more live service, always on, always updated model.
Yeah.
So you have a longer tail in terms of that kind of stuff. But I think increasingly you're probably seeing in games the same sort of stuff you're seeing in movies around things like franchises. You're also starting to see a lot more transmedia experiences. So the idea of having games that tie into films or TV, for example. I mean, Pokemon is a really good example of like the OG transmedia example of like it's a game, but also it's an anime, and then elements of the anime affect future games and all that kind of stuff. So you're starting to see that. A lot of my work otherwise kind of delves into other elements of how these mediums intersect. And then obviously games and films have this, there's always this popular dichotomy between games being things you play and movies being things you are passively engaging in. And as one of our colleagues loves to say, mugs are interactable. So it's not a discussion about interactivity versus non-interactivity, because we're starting to see that more with films as well, right? Where like you have Black Mirror episodes where you can choose your own adventure and all that kind of stuff. So I think they're starting to weave together, and especially in terms of the kinds of games that we're seeing, especially the narrative-driven games we're seeing now, you're seeing a lot of games borrow tropes and ideas from film. So being kind of playable films to some extent, obviously.
Or even responsible for bringing back a genre, say like Red Dead Redemption, right? Brought back the Western all of a sudden, and people like playing the Western rather than watching it in the cinema. Because like it's one of the oldest genres in Hollywood, but hadn't seen it in the cinemas for quite some time. But loads of people play that sort of game, and as you said, immerse themselves in that world. Something appealing about that.
Those kind of big, living, breathing worlds make people want to spend time in them, and therefore engage with themes that maybe they wouldn't have otherwise for quite a long time. Which can be a catalyst for growth of that theme in other media areas, definitely.
Or not, or they just look at it and shout about diversity.
Or that, that.
But that happens in film too. So
well, sure. And so is it the industry trying to sort of respond to criticism, or are they driving the debates?
What in terms of?
In terms of race and sort of representation, diversity, like as I'm saying.
I think we're starting to see more developers be diverse in themselves, and then bringing that into the media. Because it turns out, did you know that the things you believe in dictate how you make things? Maybe.
It's really interesting the census stats. For the kind of the makeup of the game development industry. It's not as even a divide as players, but the number of female developers and non-binary developers has been slowly increasing, only in one direction for the last 10 years or so. I think it sits around 30% now, which is still quite low, but it is better than the 18% I think we had around 2010.
Certainly increased quite rapidly then.
I mean, as I'm sure you know, especially like even in film, it's the same thing. The more diverse people you have in the room, turns out you can have voices that might suggest different kinds of content or different avenues to explore.
And it's not just the games, isn't it? It's also, you were mentioning a Twitch stream before we started recording. These other sort of platforms that promote game and the sort of wider game culture. So maybe if you're not a diehard gamer, do you consume games in other ways? Do you watch Twitch primarily as a way of consuming games?
Not Twitch exactly, because I don't often catch things live, but I do very much watch a lot of YouTube.
Content, YouTube, So what's the appeal in that then, watching someone else play?
For me personally, it's so that I can do other things at the same time. So, I don't know, it's just, I really enjoy watching someone else enjoy the game. And I often do watch long streams, but I'll watch them after they're live. But I'll be like...
Almost like a full feature-length movie.
I mean, it's like 6 hours. I'll like sit and watch a 6-hour VOD.
And also like put it on 2x speed and just watch them like bash their head into a wall 5 times.
I don't do that.
Skip past it, it's fine.
Designer at heart, you like watching other people have fun with stuff.
But I mean, that goes back to like old school co-op, couch co-op type days where you'd like control, like hot swap the controllers to like each take turns playing video games.
Yeah, when you're sharing that one game, maybe your friends had it and you didn't. Yeah. So that's interesting. So that sort of, and my interest in fandom is around that sort of social aspect. So again, we've got the stereotype of the lone gamer, maybe stuck up in their bedroom, don't come out for 24 hours. But actually, on social networks, on social media, other streaming platforms, this is a huge network of all playing at the same time, competitions, interaction, meeting people online, they become friends afterwards. Is that something that is important to the gaming culture that we see in the 21st century now?
When the PS4 came out,
Right.
I wrote a very grumpy blog article about the new share button on the PS4 controller, saying no one's ever going to press that. That'd be stupid. I'm playing a game. I'm not sharing what I'm doing.
Oh, you were very wrong.
I was very wrong, and I'm glad to say I'm
People
very wrong.
shared everything.
People, shared everything, including myself in the end.
I'll show you.
So yeah, I mean the kind of not just sharing stuff that you're doing, but also now I suppose the kind of the democratization of game development. Like anyone can be a game developer.
Yeah.
And there's a whole network and community of just I'll have a go developers. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's awesome because that's where some of the ridiculously weird experimental stuff comes from.
Yeah.
That can occasionally filter through into the
indie
industry
gone
at
big.
large.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Indie games, yeah.
That's how Balatro started. Balatro was like somebody's holiday project. They were bored over Christmas and they started messing around with the thing. It's still called Card Game on their hard drive.
So it's gone from literally filling in time, bored during the holidays, to now nominated on the list of Games Awards.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think the other side of it in terms of like community, right, is that I don't think that humans are by nature fairly social creatures.
Yeah.
So like the stereotype of the gamer is like, oh, they're so grumpy, they don't talk to anyone, they sit
Don't
down
press
and
the share button.
Don't press the share.
don't press the share button. They just play games. But like most gamers, certainly we see it teaching games, is like gamers just want to find their people.
Right.
Really.
Yeah.
And once they find their people, they're like, yes, hopefully.
That's
And
social
then
community.
they make friends, and it's all good.
I suppose the course is a bit like that. So you've got everyone coming to sort of study the same thing,
Yeah.
get to know each other's, favorite sort of video games, but also then socialize both online and in person. Is that right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a Discord? I hear you have a Discord.
We have a reasonably active Discord. Yeah.
Very active.
Yeah.
I don't use the Discord.
You don't use
I
the
can't lie.
That's a lie. You use Discord.
You're the
I use-
antithesis
no,
of a
I use-
gamer.
I use Discord, but I don't use the Discord.
You do use the Discord. I've seen you post
You've learnt.
questions.
You're going to go through and delete it.
Questions. I'll be like,
No, it wasn't me.
Yeah,
That's the
wasn't
thing,
me.
game
Wasn't there.
lurkers and streamers, different variations of interaction, isn't it?
Yes, I mean I'll quite happily observe
Yeah.
discussions
Yeah.
online. You won't catch me posting anything.
Yeah.
Goodness me.
Ooh, no.
There's people out there.
Oh, yeah.
So before we wrap up, we've got the game nomination. Any games coming that you are looking forward to?
Ooh.
Wonder Stop.
Wonder Stop.
Wonder Stop is Davey Reedon's new game. He made the Stanley Parable and the Beginner's Guide.
Oh, that's
He is
exciting.
making a cozy game deconstruction whereby you are an ex-warrior stuck in a tea house in the woods making tea for some warriors.
There's a lot of tea and woods in these games.
Lots of teas and woods. You just got to escape and drink some tea, obviously.
That's an experience.
Okay.
But obviously,
experience.
as Davey Reedon does, he's going to very much deconstruct the genre by having the warrior be like, I shouldn't be here. Why am I making tea? Why am I relaxing? I should be out working. So maybe that just touches a little itch with me and the amount that I've been working lately. But I'm really
You
excited
just
to
need
go
to
and
relax.
play that.
Yeah. Any
Yeah.
other titles you're looking forward to, Peter?
So technically it has just come out
Okay.
last month, but I haven't played it yet.
Ah,
so
so
I
you're
am
looking
still looking forward to it, which is Still Wakes the Deep.
So good.
We need to
game
stream
from the
that.
Chinese
We've
room.
played it.
We should stream it. That's a
So
very good
I would
point.
watch it if you stream it.
Okay.
It's so good.
I think we've walked into that one.
There you
That's-
go. You've got to stream that.
That's-
Camera now.
That's like a 6-hour VOD that I've watched. I've watched 2 people play it for about 6 hours. So like, it's good. I like it. Good game.
Well, thank you very much for those recommendations. Sounds amazing. And get those streams going, I suggest, because I'm sure there's an audience out there. But
Even if it's just them.
Me,
even if it's just
I'll watch
you for
it.
6 hours.
It's fine. We've said it on Pop Matters now. We have a Pop Matters audience.
Exactly.
There we go. Yeah.
Yeah,
Games,
and I was going to say to the audience, if you've enjoyed any of the discussion today, by all means, drop questions in the chat below the video when it's up on YouTube. But that's all we have time for. So thanks very much for joining me. For now, I just want to give my thanks to Peter Howell, M. Kerhsaw, and Adam Jerrett, and say we've been discussing video games and gaming culture because pop matters.